Hello, hello. Anyone here watching? Just wait a little bit and see if I've got anyone before I start. Boop, 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 boop. Hi, Tony. Got anyone else joining in? Attila, hello. Yeah, I've done a little bit more work on the dock. Quite a bit. I'll be going over all this shortly. Just want to see if... there's quite a lot I want to talk about, actually. So before I really jump into it, I just want to see if anybody else is going to pop in. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. Oh, look at this. Got some odd double column stuff going on here. Yeah, it's not really cheating if I'm just showing my design process, right? I can do whatever I want, right? Yeah, yep. After this video will get me one step closer to affiliate. I'm not actually sure I really care about it that much, as I've mentioned before to a few people. There are a few little fun things you can get, but effectively after this one goes live, I will have hit every step of required affiliate status for Twitch, other than 50 followers, and I'm at 45 followers right now. So hopefully within the next few days, I might reach out and just to various communities I'm a part of and see if I can get a few more followers in. Yeah. So this actual session marks the 8th. I think it's the 8th session that I will have done within 30 days, which is one of the requirements for affiliate status. Yeah, emotes are cool. Emotes are cool. Yep. And I love emotes. Anybody who's on Discord in either the Year Zero worlds or the Mud and Blood servers will know that I love custom emotes. So I'm all about that, don't worry. That is probably one of the most tempting bits to do with becoming affiliate. Anyway, all good. Yeah, well, I've got 3 of you in here, so that's more than enough for me to get cracking. I see actually 6 people in the chat watching, which is cool. So I'm going to kick off. So last time, if you remember, for those of you who watched, I almost took a blank Word document and started just throwing sections together. Effectively, I was looking at the outline, so I started with going through all of the main chapters. So that's why you see over here on the outline, you've got these bold sections like conflict, trappings, the town, the realm, adversaries, adventure seeds, and an appendix. I'm probably not going to be using this appendix. This appendix is more for a reminder for what I need. In fact, I might just rename this and say appendices. Whoa. In brackets to add later. And then I can just add some stuff in here. So for example, I want to have life path. I want to look at doing a life path generation system. I don't know what form that's going to take just yet. Yeah, so these sections are still undone. I did mention that I was going to try and put subheadings behind all of this stuff. But on reflection, my time between last session and this session, I felt was better spent thinking about what I actually... basically scrubbing the core of the game, the mechanics, and getting that in here. So that's what I'm going to be showing off a little bit of what I've done in the meantime. I've done a little bit of extra stuff to the document, which I'll just quickly cover, like what I did, how I did that. So first of all, we go right back up to the top here. I've commissioned artwork for Pitchfork, including a cover. I showed the cover last time. This one here is the title. This isn't a font. This is hand-drawn artwork by Harry, who's one of the players in the Forbidden Lands game. And yeah, I commissioned him to create a title for Pitchfork, and this is what he's come up with. It's gone through a few iterations, but this is the final product. So yeah, I've put as a bit of a... I mean, I live in Germany, even though I'm not German, and even though I'm not German, I wanted to put a German subtitle in there as a bit of a nod to Warhammer, Wolfrup. Because Wolfrup is all about the German influence. And I thought, and really, I live in Germany, so why not? Köpfe werden rollen means heads will roll, which I think is a nice little subtitle for Pitchfork, because it's that's what it's all about. You know, if you step out of line as a peasant, as a commoner, the likelihood is it's not going to be looked on very kindly, and your head is probably going to roll if it's bad enough. So yeah, I've added this as a so this title was delivered to me as a JPEG. I did a bit of Photoshop work with it to get it looking like a PNG, and then I've basically all I did here. So if I delete that, you just go Insert Image from Computer, and here you can see I've got my Pitchfork art. I don't know why I've got two art folders, nested folders. A bit something I'll tidy up later. And then here I've got my title, and because I've got a dark theme on my windows, you can't really see it unless I hover over it, but there we go. There's the title. Just hit open, and it sticks it in within the margins. That's basically good enough for now. I just want it in there at the top. Then as a subtitle, so here I've got it as subtitle. I've just put the version number, so I can do a bit of version control, and my name. So that is probably going to be more or less what's going to be on the front page. I will probably put underneath here, I will probably put some stuff in eventually, just housekeeping stuff with things like social media links, and if I need to mention anything specific, like where to find any files I'm referring to, yeah, there'll basically be links there. There might be a very quick, like one paragraph or 2 or 3 sentences talking about the playtest itself. So that's basically there on the front page. You read it once and that's it. And then the rest of the document from the second page onwards is all going to be about the game. So moving on, I haven't. One other thing to talk about then is you can probably see here that there's a different colored background. So to do that in Google Docs, you just go File, Page Setup, and you can see there's a page color option here. It's currently not selectable, so you just go up here to Apply to the whole document, and then you can change the color to whatever you want. I've selected a custom color. You can see there's 5 Fs followed by a 4, which is close to white. What I did was I looked, so if I just go to Google here and type in off-white, I think I actually first did something like parchment. I went to parchment. Parchment hex code. And hex code is this 6-digit code followed by a hashtag. And basically in coding, like CSS, for example, this lets you choose from a huge variety of colors and get something exactly like what you might want. So you can basically type in hex code and any color you want. So if I want to do like off-white hex code, I don't even need to follow a link. I can just click in images in Google, and straight away I'll get people giving, you know, all sorts of stuff here. Here's a cool looking one here, Pantone colors. It's on Pinterest, of course it is, so I can't actually click on the links. Fucking Pinterest sometimes. Here's another one. Okay, so this actually has the codes in there. So here's a suite of off-white color schemes, and all you do is you just take one of those 6-digit codes. You come back over here. So let's take, for example, this FFFAF1. Come back over here. File, Page Setup, whole document, page color. We're going to do a custom one with a plus. And then I just type in here after the hashtag FFFAF1. Hit OK. And There we go. I've got that off-white color that I just looked up here. This one here. Okay, simple as that. You don't have to do that. Some other things you can do if you're doing, for example, like a sci-fi or a cyberpunk type of game. It can be cool to do something like a dark. You can do, you know, like a black or a dark gray. What's this one? Close to dark gray. So I'll do that one there. It's not quite black. It's not quite dark. Well, I think it might even have a hint of blue in it. But then I would need to change my graphic to be white or whatever color I wanted it to be, and I would need to change all my. So if I hit Control A to select everything, I would then want to select something like a white text, and there I've got white text on a light background, and that's something that might be a little bit more appropriate or a bit more thematic for something like sci-fi or cyberpunk or something like that. Anyway, I'm not doing that, so I'm just going to undo a little bit to get back to what I wanted, which is here. Okay, so that's one of the first things you've probably noticed since last time is that the color of the background's a little bit different. There's this fancy cover there. Moving on then, I haven't really changed a lot of this. In fact, I probably need to... Okay, this is more or less the same. This is something new, though. This is something I've worked on, which is the archetypes and the careers. And effectively, I've come up with a list of 36 careers, if you want to call them careers, occupations, whatever, within 12 archetypes. Or I'm using the word archetypes to mean rural and urban. But yeah, basically, as you can see here, the idea is I'm depending on the group concept. So just a little bit earlier, I've talked here about having a group concept. If you're peasants from the same small village, then in character generation, you're only going to be selecting these rural archetypes for your characters. If you're selecting regulars of a tavern, it depends on where the tavern is located. If it's a tavern in a village, it'll still be rural. Although you theoretically, the GM could say, and I'll throw in entertainers because they travel sometimes, or something else. Members of a guild. Guilds are usually gilded commoners or gilded people in the medieval ages were based in urban centers. So if you were going to be members of a guild, then that's a little bit of a harder group concept to fit here, actually. So I might need to twist this because if you were members of a guild, if you were all, for example, beggars, it'd be hard to pick in it. Let's say you had 4 or 5 players in your group. It'd be hard to get a lot of variety in terms of occupations with that. So that would be something that you might need to think about creating your own occupations for. However, that's one of the things I've come up with. So I'm pretty happy with this list. I've asked a few people for feedback on it, including Ibram, who's in the chat right now. So thank you, Ibram, for that. Astuneta as well. I asked for some feedback when I was coming up with this list, and 1 or 2 others. So yeah, that's the first thing. Age. I've changed this up a bit. Originally, I put in attributes, skills, and focus points, and I've stripped that back to skill points now, and I've got it blank because that's something I need to come up with today. And under that, this is the next big change. I've gotten rid of attributes. Yeah. So I'm going to be creating a game in the Year Zero engine that has no attributes. It's going to be completely skill-based. Now, that sounds pretty out there. It sounds pretty wild. However... Everything okay, Astonata? Yeah. So the skills... Are you talking about this just skills only, Astonata? I'm just kind of curious what that with the ... okay means. But yeah. Anyway, I put a lot of thought into this. I've thought about. Yep, I am. I'm flexing my creative muscles, right? No attributes. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, basically, the idea here is, and I'll scroll down to where I've put them in. I've come up with 16 skills, right? This started off as 36 skills, and then I started slowly massaging that and trying to look at where I could combine things to come down a little bit. And what I've come up with is 16 that I'm pretty happy with. And this is kind of hard to read at the moment. When I actually came up with this list, I came up with it in a different document. So I'm going to pull that up very quickly. Give me a second to to find where I've put it exactly. I think I've got it in a different... Oh, I can't share that. I can't share that because there's some top secret stuff I'm working on. Just to tease everyone a little bit. Here we go. So let me hit share on this and open it. Okay, right, here we go. Fuck's sake. Anyone with the link, copy link. Let's try that again. Here we go. Right. So here's the list. Here's the list of 18 skills. As I said, I originally had 36 skills. There was a lot of duplication in them. There was a lot of low-level granularity, which I felt wasn't necessarily needed. But you need to have quite a bit of... If you're going to go skills only, you need to have a fair amount of diversity in what the skills are covering. So what I felt I needed to do was coming up with these 18 skills that I eventually came up with was putting in exactly when you would roll to do something in the game. Downtime. Hey, yeah. More background about the game development. So I'll just pause right here very quickly. This is number 2 in a design diary I've started. The first one is on YouTube. So if you go to, in fact, if you look in the video just below, you'll see a link to the YouTube channel, which is 3 Skulls. I've got like what do you call it? A redirect link to it, which is 3 Skulls TV /YouTube. I think you can do YT. Works as actually YT is what I've got written there. So yeah, go to that and you'll find you'll find a link to the first one. That's a 2-hour-long design diary. This one will be going up on YouTube within a day or two after I've done this live. But effectively, Pitchfork... I'll go back up to the top very quickly. Pitchfork is a game designed for low fantasy and historical settings, so medieval Europe, Warhammer's Old World, Harn, etc., and focuses on commoners trying to get out of bad situations alive. This isn't easy when the world is determined to keep you mired in the mud. And I go on to say what PCs are meant to do in the game, and effectively it sounds a little bit like a medieval Call of Cthulhu, if you will, without the Cthulhu mythos. So almost, I envision this really having quite a horror feel to it because characters, PCs, are going to be relatively powerless. They're not going to have a lot of authority. They're not going to have a lot of resources at their command. They're not going to have... they're not going to be super highly skilled like you would tend to see in a typical Year Zero game. So one of the big... And this actually is quite good to bring up right now because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come back and look at getting rid of attributes. One of the problems I see with Pitchfork fitting in with the Year Zero engine is that the Year Zero engine has a lot of components typically going into it. You've got attributes, you've got skills, and you've got talents, typically. And those 3 things all... then you've got gear, and you've got help and modifiers, etc., which can all lead to having quite big dice pools and quite high probabilities of success, especially for starting characters. And when I look at some of the inspirations for this game, I want to be able to use this Pitchfork to play Wolfrup, a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. And in that game, you are failing a lot. It's kind of like Call of Cthulhu a little bit, where... your skills aren't super high in value, and you're failing often. Now, failing often isn't necessarily very fun, and I want to address that in this game and actually have it a little bit less harsh than Wolfrup is. It's one of the things I don't really like about Wolfrup. But the setting in Wolfrup is one of my favorite fantasy settings, and this is basically trying to marry up my favorite setting with my favorite set of rules. So anyway, looking at the whole gamut of things that go into making up a dice pool, I started looking at how I could tweak that to reduce dice pool sizes. And there's a whole suite of things you can do. If you start separating them out and looking at them all as building blocks of pieces and how they can feed into each other and which ones you can take away. For example, talents. It's very easy to just strip talents out and say, you know what, I don't want to keep talents. Because it's adding another level of complexity, another thing to add into making characters a bit more badass. That's an easy one to do. However, with attributes and a small number of skills, what you lose out on is that character uniqueness that you get in the typical Year Zero engines. And that's very deliberate. The talents are there to try and differentiate characters from each other. So I looked at all these different elements. I was also looking at Troubleshooters, which is another Swedish game by Helmgast, another Swedish publisher who do Cult. They've had a Kickstarter recently, and their game Troubleshooters has effectively what I've got here, which is skills with no attributes and no talents either. And they've produced something quite awesome in that game. And there are other games that do the same thing as well. But Troubleshooters is the one that really made me, because it was current, it was a Kickstarter I've backed myself. I started thinking like, hey, could I do something similar in the Year Zero engine? And started looking into it seriously. And this is where I've come up to. So that's a bit of a background on this. Pitchfork, as I said, is meant to be very low fantasy. You're playing commoners in this game, or at least you're meant to be playing commoners in this game. So I really want to be scaling things back. And when you look at this list of skills, one thing that I'm missing that's really good about attributes is that attributes tend to give players a quick overview of the raw capabilities of their players, or of their player characters, sorry. So, for example, your strength stat typically will tell you how strong and physical you are. Your agility stat will tell you how nimble you are. Your wit stat will tell you how clever you are. And your empathy stat will basically tell you how good you are with charisma or how friendly you are, that sort of thing. And that's great. That's really good. However, it was important to me that I still kept similar skills that would allow people to get that view of the physicality or the raw capabilities of their players. So you'll see things on here like animal handling and trade at the top and bottom. They don't really tell you anything about the character that's learned things, right? However, might is in there. Might basically is your brawn, your physicality, right? You have athletics, which is your speed, your nimbleness, your athleticism, for example. Then you have things like charm. In fact, this is one area I thought was really important, especially in a game like Pitchfork, is not to focus on combat. It needs more social skills, and so it took me a little while to come up with what I felt was a good number. And in the end, I've come up with 3. I think I was scrubbing this at the last minute, but I think I've landed on 3, and that is charm, insight. Oh no, command. Command kind of accounts into that. So charm, command, insight, and sway. Yeah, I'm just scrolling over that list. Yeah. So charm, if you look at the list here, charm is basically manipulating someone into liking you specifically by charming them, being flirty, making jokes, offering a sympathetic ear, that sort of thing. Like just turning on the charm, right? I'll jump to sway because that's also a level of manipulation, and sway is basically it seems very similar, but swaying someone is less about using your friendliness or seduction or that sort of thing, and more about getting somebody to agree with you, whether that's through lying, through deception, whether that is through clever rhetoric, persuasion, that sort of thing. So if you're trying to sway someone through a discussion of some description, that's sway. If you're trying to turn up the charm, if you're going to take somebody out to a tavern for the night and get them drunk and give them a good time and just show them that you're an amazing friend, that's charm. And the lines should be fairly clear between the two. Command is, commanding someone. So you're going to roll that to basically, if you're trying to get somebody to follow your orders. That can also include intimidation. That can include if you're torturing somebody, if you're in a diplomatic situation, that can be there as well as the standard thinking about like you're commanding someone, like an officer on a battlefield. And I'm going to be looking at Coriolis for providing more effective help. We'll get into that a little bit later. So command the command is a skill in Coriolis, and I'm going to be using one element of it in a certain way. And finally, insight is typically what we see in Forbidden Lands, for example. I think it might be called intuition there. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's basically your ability to perceive how somebody is feeling. So your ability to read people's emotions, to kind of get a feel for what somebody might be planning, that sort of thing. That's all insight. So those are the big ones, right? And then the rest of the list there is I mean, you can read through it. It's pretty straightforward. If you've looked at Vaesen, a lot of these are similar to Vaesen. They have not athletics, but agility. They don't have awareness, but it's called vigilance. They obviously don't have everything split between charm, command, insight, etc. That's all handled under manipulation. They do have close combat. It's got the same name. Healing is called medicine in that game. Insight is called observation, I believe. Investigation is called investigation. Lore is called education in that game. Might is called force in that game. Operate vehicle's a new one. So that's something I've added in. Outdoor survival is also not in Vaesen, but it's not necessarily applicable in Vaesen. Ranged combat is in there called ranged combat. Skullduggery in Vaesen is called stealth, but stealth in that game includes things like picking pockets, picking locks, sleight of hand tricks, that sort of thing. So to me, stealth didn't really have the right sort of ring to it. Stealth to me is purely sneaking around. So I've gone with a really great term, skullduggery, which basically means exactly that. It means sneaking around, doing underhand things, but also being clever with your fingers. And I think it's a bit more of an evocative word than sleight of hand. Streetwise is the counterpoint to outdoor survival. Outdoor survival is survival outdoors, and streetwise is knowing how to behave within an urban environment. So blending into a crowd, as it says there, shadowing someone through the streets, etc. Transvalar, hey Ed. Yeah, so that's basically it. Trade is another new one there. So I've split manipulation from 1 skill into roughly 4 skills. So Vaesen has 12, by the way. So that takes the number from 12 to 15, because I've taken 1 and added basically, I made it into 4, haven't I? Yeah, so 15. So I've added 3 more to the number to 12, and then the extra 3 are animal handling, operating vehicle, trade, outdoor survival, streetwise. I have no idea what I've done, but I basically used Vaesen as the starting point because Vaesen is the newest game. I did talk about this a little bit in my first episode, and yeah, I wanted to use that as a starting point. I think it had some really good diversification in terms of investigation, awareness, observation, all those things. There was a nice number of sort of skills to do with perceiving things, and I wanted to keep that for Pitchfork because I think that's quite important. Anyway, so those are the skills. Skills are the big thing now. So we'll see how this goes. This is going to make this design diary a little bit more interesting as well, because playtesting is going to be really important. I'm going to be doing playtesting actually live on the stream eventually, probably in a month or 2, I would imagine, or maybe less than that. But the idea really is to look at how to think about these things, how to scrub these things, how to put the pieces together. Because if I was just creating another Year Zero engine that kept everything exactly as it was in the Year Zero OGL, right? Attributes, skills, talents, and just I could crack something out fairly quickly. Probably within a week or 2, I could have a game playtest ready. But I like to really kick the framework a little bit and shake things up a little bit and dip into the various different games and cherry pick the things that I think work really well, because the Year Zero engine is really modular in that way. No worries, Ed. Yeah. Let me wet my whistle for a second. This is a Stein from... I'm in Germany. This is a German one. They're called a Krug here, not Stein. And, yeah. It feels a little bit nerdy drinking from it, but hey, the show is a tavern, right? So, and I'm in Germany, so fuck it. Okay, so we've got the archetypes there. Skills I was just talking about. So, yeah, I've kind of scrubbed this area here a little bit, which is the bit about your character. It's going to include things like character creation, how you do that. So I'll get into that later. Just once I'm finished, I'm showing what I've changed. Careers is the next thing. I'm actually going to pull this up because I've got them all listed here. I did show at the beginning of this. I showed the 36 careers, but what I haven't shown is how the skills tie to that. And the current thing I'm thinking about, one of the things that the Year Zero engine does is for archetypes or whatever they're called, occupations, professions, roles, concepts, sub-concepts, whatever the game is in Year Zero Engine that has these things, they tend to have a favored or a key attribute and key skills relating to them, right? So basically what it's telling you is you can have this key attribute higher than, like, it can go up to 5 usually, but nothing else can go up to 5 in your attributes. So basically if you've got the 4 attributes, and that's how that works. And then the skills are meant to say, because you have this role or you have this occupation, you have had training in, you will be more likely to have had training in these specific skills. So you are also allowed the cap for how many skills at character creation you can put into these career skills, as I'm kind of referring to them, career skills, is higher. You can usually put 3 into them, whereas everything else is either limited to 1. I think some of the games might be limited to 2. So that's good. I like that. I'm using a system which has careers, and I want to keep something similar. But I can't differentiate between attributes and skills because I only have skills, right? At the moment, I'm thinking also, I actually want to, for the first time I playtest this, I want to playtest it without any focuses or specializations and without any talents. I literally just want to keep that list of 18 skills and see how it plays out. If you think that sounds kind of out there, bear in mind, I have already created a game called Year Zero Mini, which just has 4 attributes, no skills, no talents. Although arguably it has career as a skill in it. But I'm happy to kind of play around with that because I've already created something I've play tested as well, Year Zero Mini, and it works absolutely fine. This is basically taking that same concept, the concept of just attributes, and flipping on its head and saying, instead of just attributes, let's look at just skills and take that and like see how that works. And yeah. So what I decided to do was I decided for each of the archetypes, as you can see here on the screen, I'm going to assign 1 key skill for each of those attributes. For example, if you're a peasant, all of the peasants are going to have might because they're used to lugging things around, to using their bodies a lot. Therefore, all of any of the peasant archetypes, might is a key skill there. Then within each of the occupations or careers, whatever, I haven't fully decided what I want to call them, but I'll call them careers for now. Within the careers under that, I'm then saying here are 3 additional career skills specific for that sub-career. So, for example, a farmer would have animal handling, athletics, and trade agriculture. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? And I've done that for every single one of these. So all 36 careers and all 12 archetypes have a skill assigned to them. And that took a little bit of doing. That took hours and hours and hours to come up with that. Scrub it, check I didn't have too much duplication, etc. So I definitely didn't want to do that live. So I'm just kind of explaining why what I did and how I came up with it, and that's basically what I did. So first I came up with the list of skills, and then I assigned those skills to the various archetypes and looked at if I needed to potentially change some of the archetypes around as a result of that, because if the skills are too similar for some of the archetypes, or for some of the careers, some of those careers are going to need to change. And I think I might have changed, did I change 1 or 2? Actually, I don't think I did. Once I decided on the career list, it was all pretty straightforward from there. Yeah, the other thing that's interesting about doing this is that I'm going to be making the suggestion that these 3 occupations within the archetype are purely examples, right? You can come up with anything you want. For example, under Pauper, urban archetype Pauper, streetwise, you've got a gong farmer, a rag picker, a vagabond. Well, what if you want to play a beggar? I mean, beggar would fit perfectly into Pauper there, right? You can come up with a beggar. Come up with a beggar when all you need to come up with are three skills that apply to the beggar. They could even be 3 the same skills as one of these other ones. So you basically just rename something like rag picker to beggar and go with it. It doesn't really matter too much. And the reason I wanted to do this is that I wanted to give an example here of how you can have a lot of diversity between these things, but also allow for customization during character creation. And a big reason for that is because I want to keep this game relatively compatible with games like Harnmaster and Wolfrup, which have a huge number of skills that I'm not trying to replicate here. So instead, what I'm more concerned about is coming up with a decent number of archetypes. So 6 rural, 6 urban, and then within each of those, 3 examples. And a good example of that, if you go to tradesfolk under rural archetypes, tradesfolk, you've got a carpenter, a midwife healer, and a smith. I could put a miller in there. I could put a thatcher in there. There are tons of rural tradesfolk who I could put in that section. Hunters, for example. A climber is basically... it's not really medieval. It goes a little bit further back, but basically people who used to climb on cliffs, very specific cliffs in England, looking for, maybe Scotland actually, looking for, I think, cormorant eggs. But basically a sea cliff bird, and they would have ropes and harnesses, and they would climb like down a cliff, dangling from cliffs to steal eggs from these birds. And the birds were very, very aggressive. We're talking about like the year 800 AD, so like equipment wasn't that great either. It was a very dangerous job. But that sounds like a really cool occupation to me. You know, you're hunting. You're basically you're hunting for something animal related, right? Although you're not killing an animal, you're taking eggs, and it just has a nice little bit of flavor to it. A fisher technically is a hunter because you're hunting fish. But you're not thinking about a typical hunter with a bow and arrow going into a forest and shooting deer or boar, that sort of thing. A fowler is somebody who basically hunts birds. So they're going to mainly have nets rather than bows and arrows, that sort of thing. However, it would be very, very easy to come up with a standard, typical hunter career and slot it into that hunter archetype. For example, the 3 skills you would have would be ranged combat, probably skullduggery, and outdoor survival. In fact, Fowler has all 3 of those. So just reskin Fowler to say Hunter, and you're good to go. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the idea. So my plan here is during character creation, is to really assign a lot of the customization at the archetype level. So that the career level is really just looking at skills, maybe 1 or 2 other things as well. But anything I choose to attach to the careers, I'm going to make sure that it's very, very easy to come up with something yourself very easily and keep the little bit more of the complexity at the archetype level. So, that's that. Let's go back to the document. So that's careers there. Then I have a section on, so this is actually meant to be a chapter, so let me just quickly put a page break in there. Then the chapter on skills, and this is probably where I'm going to spend a lot of time today on. I then have this bit here, which is effectively this list. This list looks nice on this piece of paper because it's an A4 size document, but and it fits perfectly on one page, which is good to show people as an example. But this is an A5 document I'm working with, so it kind of spills over to the next page. So I'm not actually sure 2-column works here. I'll have to play around with it a little bit to see with formatting and stuff. Bearing in mind, I'm only using Google Docs here for simplicity's sake. I will actually, the last thing I'll be doing before sending this out into the world, sorry, I should rephrase that. For the playtest, I'm going to be using this as well. So I'm not planning on spending too much time during playtest making this look super sexy. Because during playtest, things are going to change. Potentially quite a lot of stuff is going to change. And if I've pigeonholed myself into specific formats and fitting words on a page, that really takes a lot of time to keep re-scrubbing through all that every time you want to make a change. So the idea is I get the manuscript after it's been playtested to the point where I'm happy with it to be published. I will then take the final version of the rules. I will stick it into Affinity Publisher, which is the program I use. And then I will start wordsmithing, doing editing, that sort of thing, and fitting it into the format that I want. And I'll do all that myself, and I'll do it on the channel as well to show how that works. But that's going to be probably months down the line. But hopefully this year. And yeah, and then the rest of the book is basically sections I haven't put anything in. However, I did want to talk about one thing here, which is conflict. Conflict in the Year Zero engine games follows 2 methods. The first method is the typical one you'll see in almost all of the Year Zero games, and that is pretty traditional, really. You've got initiative, you have actions, you have an action economy, you have zones rather than measuring things out, although Mutant Year Zero does provide measurements as well if you want to use battle maps, etc. Yeah, and a whole list of things that you can do. It kind of spells out how rolls work for your actions, etc., in quite level of detail. The trauma systems are a thing as well, which actually I want to talk about trauma today too. The trauma systems are always different in all of the Year Zero games. The only ones that have the same one really are Mutant Year Zero and Forbidden Lands, where the attributes degrade. Otherwise, they all have a unique little twist on how trauma is handled. And as a result, I'm going to be coming up with something unique here for Pitchfork as well that I want to actually fit Pitchfork. One of the design goals for this is to only have a single pool of dice. So it shouldn't matter if you're new to role playing and you don't have dice, you don't have like a 7 set of polyhedrals, you can go raid Monopoly and every board game in your house and come up with 6 dice, six-sided dice, or 5 or whatever, and they all might look different, and that won't matter. You'll still be able to play Pitchfork with them. That's a big thing for me. And in fact, the majority of Year Zero games do that. Coriolis, Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, and Vaesen all have a single dice pool that don't look different. Aliens arguably nearly has that because the stress dice are something separate and you only need 1 set of dice. It can be any set, like you just need 2 colors of dice. Where it starts getting a bit harder to use normal dice is with Mutant Year Zero and Forbidden Lands. And although I really love both of those games and I love the dice system in that, they're not very accessible. And for me, accessibility is a big part of this. So anyway, so when I'm thinking about trauma systems, I don't want to be using... I miss saying bye to Ed, that's cool. I don't want to be missing... I don't want to be choosing something like the Mutant Year Zero system or trying to pigeonhole the Mutant Year Zero system into Pitchfork by, having a single set of dice. Artifact dice, yeah. I've actually thought about using artifact dice for a few things. Not trauma. I actually have something in mind for trauma, which I'm going to be developing. Artifact dice came up in an interesting way when I was thinking about how to do specializations before I landed on just doing skills. And I might come back to this. It would make the game less accessible because people would need to have like a D8, a D10, and a D12. And let's face it, the average person who isn't already a role player does not have those dice on them. They'd have to buy them. So at the moment, I'm trying to think of ways around doing that. But I do like these. I've got some Forbidden Lands ones right here. So, the D12, for example, has differing numbers of successes depending on how high over 6 you roll. Yeah. I love artifact dice. I kind of want to include them in, but again, at the moment, I want to see if I can stick to my original design goal of just 1 set of D6s and nothing else. But that is for me, that would be a really cool way to do specializations without adding a huge dice pool, right? You have, let's say your average dice pool in Pitchfork is going to be maybe 4 dice-ish, potentially. Again, I need to play around with numbers for this. Now, if you have a specialization, so let's say you have the skill, if I was to do specializations, for example, animal handling, a specialization might be dogs, or it might be hogs, or it might be hawks, or it might be horses, for example, right? So anytime you're using animal handling for any animal, you would use your skill level for that. However, and I would have this ranked at 3 ranks, theoretically. So at your first rank, you would add a D8 to your dice pool. At your second rank, you would add a D10, and at the third rank, you would add a D12. And basically, the idea is if you get a 6 or higher, you're going to get at least 1 success from that dice. So obviously, if you have a D12, more than half of the results in that dice are going to give you a success. So your odds of success really ramp up. And the idea would be anytime so if you have animal handling and you have a specialization in dog, when you're rolling animal handling for a horse, you just roll your base animal handling skill. If you're trying to charm a dog or you're trying to tame a dog or something like that, you're specialized. You would add the polyhedral to your dice for that specialization and roll it. Anyway, pretty straightforward. However, as I said, I'm going to try this first without any specializations and see how I get on. I might be adding them in later. If I add specializations, regardless of what dice I'm going to be using, they would be, again, I would be probably providing 3 examples per skill, but I would make it very clear that it would be open-ended. I'm a big fan of open-ended things in games, and open-ended skill specializations is a big one. Because, for example, if I was to try and define every animal that you could have for animal handling, it'd just be ridiculous. I could put any kind of animal on the planet in there. It's just pointless, right? So the idea would be you specify what it is. And in fact, if you look at the skills, just mentioning specification, I actually have 2 skills here which require specification. So operate vehicle. The idea here is that you replace vehicle with whatever you can operate. So that might be a cart, that might be a ferry, a ship, anything else like that, right? And again, I'm leaving this open-ended where I say any other vehicle because this is going to have a very light setting attached to it, but the idea is you should be able to use this for any low fantasy setting or medieval historical setting. So if you have airships, for example, you could put operate airship. That would be your skill, operate airship. Theoretically, I could just keep that as operate vehicle, and then the vehicle itself could be a specialization. So that's one area where if I was to go specialization, this would change slightly, this skill. Likewise with trade, that would also be one area I would, I would have to probably keep that as trade or tradecraft, and then there would be the specialization be what you're specialized in. So at the moment, you're specializing in the skill. So again, if I drop down here to the examples, farmer has trade agriculture. Trade agriculture is just a skill. If the farmer wants to get trained in blacksmithing, they have to take trade blacksmith or trade smithing as a separate skill. And that would be a completely separate skill on a different line on the character sheet. So that's the way I'm working. That's the way I'm looking at it right now. However, if I decide to go the specialization route, then I would those 2 specific skills would be changed. And thinking about it, I might actually go that direction. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So that's where I'm at. We are nearly an hour into this 2-hour stream, and I've done a recap. But really, the recap is including a bunch of things that have changed. So that's where I'm starting from right now. If I go back here, I'm not going to just try and type full sentences in here. I'm just going to really try and put my ideas down on what I want from various things. Let me just have a quick look at the chat because there was a comment coming in here. So different colored dice is a difficult requirement. What I'm saying is you don't need different colored dice. You can pick up... My point is there is only going to be one pool of dice in this game. So it doesn't matter if you have a red, a blue, 6 white dice. You've got a big pile of random dice. All that matters is that they're all d6s, because when you roll that pile of dice, all you're looking for is 6s. It doesn't matter what color they are. So that isn't actually a requirement. That's fine. How do you learn new skills? That's something I need to develop. But the idea here is that... let me bring up my skill list. Let me go over here then. The idea is that some of these are going to be... Now, this is something I'm kind of going back and forth on. But because there are no attributes, theoretically, any general skill needs to have at least 1 skill point in it. Okay? That means pretty much most of the things on this list are going to have 1 skill point in them. The ones which won't would be animal handling would be a specialist skill. Or advanced skill, if you will. Let's call them advanced skill for the moment. So animal handling would be an advanced skill. Close combat would be an advanced skill. And I say close combat because if you're throwing a stone at somebody, that would be athletics. If you are wrestling with somebody or doing hand-to-hand fighting, that's might. In fact, I put in there grapple with someone in hand-to-hand combat, specifically in might. So if you need to learn how to kill or hit things effectively with a weapon, that's close combat. That would be an advanced skill. Healing, to know how to heal somebody, would be an advanced skill. Everything else on the left-hand side there, more or less, would be general. On the right-hand side, operating a vehicle, you need to know what you're doing. That would be an advanced skill. Outdoor survival, there's an argument one way or the other for that. Doesn't really... I don't know. Ranged combat would be an advanced skill. Streetwise, like outdoor survival, could or could not be. Depends on how I want to go with that. And finally, trade. Trade would definitely be an advanced skill because that's something you have to learn. So the idea with that would be anything that's a general skill, you would have at least 1 point in, so you wouldn't need to learn that new. However, anything that is an advanced skill, if you hadn't put any points in it at character creation, you would need to be trained in it by somebody who has at least 1 point in it, right? So somebody who is already has some ability in that skill would have to mentor you and have to basically teach you how to do it. Is it going to be a crunch mechanism or an easy one? It's going to be easy. I don't know what D&D means. Oh, downtime. You're going down a deep, dark rabbit hole there. Is it going to be a crunch mechanism like Forbidden Lands or an easy one like D&D? I don't know what you mean by that, because D&D is crunchier than Forbidden Lands, in my opinion. And I have very strong feelings about D&D. I'm not a fan of D&D. I've played it more than any other game I've played. Mainly because my home group love it. I don't. But I would argue Forbidden Lands is quite crunchy as well. I'd argue they're probably similar levels of crunch. But if we're talking about, if you want to say like a rules light game, if we're keeping to the Year Zero engine, Tales from the Loop is much more light. It's much lighter than Forbidden Lands, for example. Vaesen, the new game that's out in beta at the moment for Kickstarter backers, which I'm one of, is the next lightest one after that. And this is going to feel like probably like similar level to Vaesen. I want to keep it relatively lightweight, so not too crunchy. Yeah, pick one you got 3 points in, 2 with 2, and the rest are 1. Yeah, but then you've got there's issues with that, right? In terms of skill spreads. We'll talk about that a bit later. But the idea being that if balance is an important thing to me, which really it's not super important to me, but if balance was important to me, and I have split the skills down general and advanced skill lines, you will find that by keeping a simple rule like that, you'll have some players who start with more skills than other players. Unless I just say everyone starts with 30 skills, put them wherever you like, which is probably the easy way to do it. With some caveats that, like, you're capped at, yeah, you can only put, I'll talk about that in a second, because I've got ideas for this too. Yeah, because if you say your career skills, for example, you have, for example, 10 points to put in your 4 career skills, the 1 at archetype level and the 3 in the specific career level. Fine, all well and good. You'll put them in there. However, you'll notice that some of them have a lot of what I would call advanced skills in them. So, for example, let's try and pick one out here. Probably any of the tradesfolk ones here at the top. The trade one is definitely an advanced skill, right? Midwife healer. Healing is an advanced skill. So 2 of their 4 are advanced skills. So if I say you've got to put 10 in these, for example, I'm forcing people to put skills in advanced skills. Whereas if I'm saying for a peasant, that's probably a good one to use. Nope. A pauper, maybe. Streetwise. Yeah, theoretically a gong farmer. A gong farmer is a night soilman, sometimes they're called. People who go around towns and cities and they shovel shit. They don't shovel shit, actually. They have a wheelbarrow generally, and they collect the barrels of shit that people defecate into. They put outside their houses at night, and these night soilmen, these gong farmers, come around. They collect the buckets, put them into their wheelbarrow, and go and get rid of them. So they basically, before sewers were a thing, they were the people carrying shit away. Theoretically, all 4 of those would be basic skills. And if I'm forcing people to go 10 skills in those, and then I could specify, make sure that every, you can put 1 point then in every basic skill. They've already got 4 of their, let's say, 12 basic skills are assigned points there. So they'd only have an additional 8 points to spend. Whereas for a tradesfolk, they're only using 2 of theirs, right? So they still have the 10 points they're assigning at the beginning, but then there are 10 basic skills that they can put a single point into. Yeah, so they would theoretically get 2 more starting points if I was to do it like that. However, I think the easiest way around this is just to say, here's a blanket number of points you get based on your age. 30, for example, and then just put some rules and say, like, you can have 1 point in any non-career skill, and you can have X number of points, however I want to do it, in your career skills. Yeah, Astonata is asking about what's going to be the cost beside a trainer. One problem with these steins is they're really hard to drink from if you hold it the incorrect way. And it's kind of hard to drink normally because when you're wearing a headset like this, it's pushing on the headset. Anyway. Right. Couple of things here. So, learning new skills, XP. Yeah. Do you automatically have 1 point in each skill? So this would be the thing, right? If I'm saying, so let me address each of these. I'll start with Ibrahim's because it's relating to what I was just talking about. If it's a general skill, there will be a requirement that every general skill has to have at least 1 point in it. So when you're assigning your skills, you'll have to do that. And the problem with only saying 1 point in a skill is that gives you 1 dice to roll. Your dice pool is literally 1. That is really hard to roll a 6 on, right? You've got like a 16-ish% chance of rolling a single success on a 6-sided die. It's pretty harsh. However, that's kind of in line with a lot of the D100 games that I'm kind of emulating here. However, I would kind of prefer the baseline to be 2 dice, which is basically 33% of a chance of success. Because it feels to me like if you're putting no thought into this skill whatsoever, you're still going to have a third of the time you're going to succeed. That feels okay to me. So my thinking is that every general skill has to have at least 2. And for advanced skills, there won't be a limit. So you could put just 1 into an advanced skill. So, like, you know, it's something where you have to really learn that. You know, you have to really learn how to, animal handling. You have to know what you're doing with animals. And at the beginning, if you've only got a little bit of skill in it, you're going to be fucking up a lot. Same with close combat. If you've just started learning how to use a weapon, you're probably overly confident. It's probably more dangerous than it's probably the most dangerous time even before. It's probably more dangerous than before you'd even learn to pick up a weapon, because you'd probably be running or like holding your hands up saying, please don't hurt me, right? But if you think you know what you're doing, you're potentially, yeah, anyway. I'm quite happy for that, for the advanced skills. One thing I didn't mention, actually, let me just back up very slightly, is how high the skills would go here. I'm not talking about skills only going to 5. I'm talking about skills going up to 10, right? However, I've talked about one of the reasons for doing this is to reduce pool sizes. That doesn't mean I would be allowing starting characters to start any skill at 10. That would absolutely not be the case. The cap would be something like 6 dice. I'm thinking 6 to start off with for playtesting. So the highest you could go in a single career skill, you'd have to pick a single one, would be like, you can go up to 6 in a single career skill. Now, that might seem like a lot, but if you think about any of the other Forbidden Lands games, any of the other Year Zero games like Forbidden Lands, for example, you could start with an attribute at 6, right? You could start with a skill at 3. So if your best thing in the game, your best skill in the game is usually going to be 8 or 9 dice to start off with. In this, I'm saying the maximum you're going to get for your single best one is going to be 6. That's significantly lower, and I'm happy with that. So yeah, the cap, the highest you could get to would be 10. Theoretically, I could just not even put a cap on that and say skills could theoretically go as high as you want, but I don't know. I mean, it's easy for somebody to ignore a 10 dice cap anyway as a house rule. I don't really care too much about that. I feel like it's important to put a little limit in there in the game as a design exercise. And if people want to ignore it, then they can. Okay, so that's that question there. Ibrahim saying troubleshooter's base is 15% and 1 dice pool is close. Again, this is going to be something where I'm going to really need to test things out and see in playtesting how this works out. Maybe 1 dice is enough, and maybe it feels about right. I certainly think it feels right for advanced skills, but for general skills, we're talking about athletics. If somebody's running and stuff, I kind of feel like 2 is probably the right number. But yeah. Let's go back a bit. So I had some questions about advancement, XP, that sort of thing. Melty asked about XP. Astuneta asked about, can you learn all skills? What's going to be the cost besides a trainer? Yeah, I haven't decided yet. Is a short answer. I am not a huge fan of experience points. There are better ways to handle it. In Year Zero Mini, for example, which I've already mentioned, you learn by doing. So you put a tally. Every time you fail a skill, you put a tally against that skill. And once your tallies equal the new ranking, you level up effectively in that skill. I'm kind of tempted to do something similar here. However, I'm also not thinking... I need to think about meta currencies a little bit. Because something I do feel strongly about is rewarding characters for role-playing their characters. So things like your personalities. If I want to have... If I just show you my playtest here... I want to have motivations. I want to have problems. I want there to be a friend. Maybe one or two more. And this is something in my latest playtesting batch of... or by my latest playtesting in Year Zero Mini, there were three personalities. Very, very similar to those three I've just written down there. I didn't tie them to a single mechanic. They were just there for role-playing purposes, for players to help get them inside the heads of their characters. And what I found in an 8-session campaign, one of the feedback that came back, bits of feedback that came back, was that pretty much everyone never ever thought about their personalities, myself included. I was actually a player in this playtest, which was really nice. And that's, I think, is kind of important. If you're going to have them there, if you either just have a single personality that people can just look at and think like, okay, my character is whatever, happy-go-lucky. Fine. That gives me a little like hook to sink my fingers into to play that character. If you start listing lots of them, I think they need to be tied to some sort of mechanic, some sort of currency, if you will. That's where experience points becomes kind of attractive. In fact, I think most of the Year Zero games tie the personality traits to experience points. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I quite like that. It's a good use of experience or gaining experience. But again, I'm not 100% sure on how I would do that. If I'm going to be doing skills through usage where you're tallying every time you fail, which I really like, I need to think of something else for personality. And maybe it's just you scale the personality right back. But again, I'm a bit up in the air about that. I want to define personalities. The way I want to do this is I want to think about personalities as a definite thing to have on a character sheet, and then I want to think about how I want to tie. And when I'm making decisions about things like meta currencies and advancement, I want to make those decisions with personality being a specific element of a character that needs consideration, rather than taking it out and thinking like, personality I can do with or without it, and let's think about these things in isolation a little bit. So for me, I think the personality hooks are really important. That was the initial feedback for an earlier version of Year Zero Mini, was that I did have personality tied to bennies, effectively luck points. I was calling them in that game, and I had a lot of overwhelming feedback from people saying they loved how the personalities were tied to that, because new role players were really getting into their characters and learning like leaning into their characters' personalities in the game, and it made for a really rich experience. And when that came out, it was like it just completely disappeared. So yeah, I think it's important to have there. We'll see how I do it. Let me just quickly catch up. So yeah, I think for me, experience points is something I need to think about. I haven't got there yet. It's to me, that's not a super important element. Advancement comes a little bit later in the design process. But yeah. And certainly there will be the ability to train skills with a trainer, where you can pay somebody to train them, regardless of whether I'm doing experience or something else. And I'll have rules for that in this. Okay, let me just catch up on some of these. Yeah, over 10 doesn't matter. I agree. Normal dice from skill is low, but your personality give bonuses if motivated well by the player. Yeah, and this is something... this is actually something I've thought of as well. I had one personality element in Year Zero Mini was called the concept, and I was leaning into Fate Core for this. Fate Core has aspects, and one of them is called your high concept. And your high concept is the description of what your player is, or what your player character is. It is a combination of... It's who they are, right? It could be a career, it could be a background, whatever it is, it defines who your character is. And it's usually 3 to 6 words long. And, yeah, rather than just saying, plucky blacksmith, to use like a Pitchfork one, you'd be like, there's lots of guidance for how that spells out. And the idea is when you use that aspect for a roll, you get a bonus to your dice roll. And in Year Zero Mini, I actually did that. The concept, which was I kind of split it into 3 elements. I split it into oh god, let me just try to remember this. It was your career. Oh, I can't remember it. I split it into three elements, right? And the idea was there are these various different elements of your concept, which included your career, and it was open-ended. The player could come up with whatever they wanted for that, like a high concept in Fate. And if you were doing something that was very applicable to that concept, you would get 2 dice. If you were doing something that was kind of tangentially related, you could make an argument for it, but like the GM wasn't super convinced, but it's kind of like, okay, it's not ridiculous. You could have 1 point, or you could have 1 dice. And that is definitely some way you could do it, is you could say, okay, if you're using your motivation, you get an extra dice. If your problem is coming into play, I kind of see this might spell out what kind of personality traits I go for, because problem might be a harder one to think about. How does that add dice to the pool? But again, it could just be an issue of rephrasing things, changing it from being called a problem to a vice or something like that. Friend, if you're trying to help a friend in need, then I could certainly see how you put in that little bit of extra effort for the extra dice. So yeah, that's a good way of doing that without actually tying it, without requiring experience points. So yeah, certainly one of the things I'm thinking about anyway. Again, but I don't need to think about that for a little while. Yeah, cool. There's something else that just came into my head and left very, very quickly, so it's gone. Oh, pushing. That's what I wanted to talk about very quickly. Ah, man, I'm kind of all over the shop here. I wanted to try and stick to some structure for this. Let me just mention pushing because it's kind of related to this. Pushing is a core element of Year Zero engine games, and I want to keep it here. I want to tie it to trauma. That's how I want to do it. I've got an idea for trauma, so let's talk about that now. I'm going to jump straight down to trauma and conflict. Okay, buckle in. I want to try narrative conflict in this game. I don't want to have turn structure, initiative, actions, all the rest of it. I also don't want something completely freeform like Powered by the Apocalypse does. I want it to have a little bit of structure. And in fact, that's great because we already have a really, really great example of that in Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood. They provide something called Extended Trouble, which is a really great way of providing some structure to any kind of scene that requires more than just rolling a single skill roll. And as it sounds, Extended Trouble, it's like a climatic scene, right? It's something big happening in the story where, you know, the player characters are all up against the big bad, or they're being accused of a crime and they're standing in front of their accuser. Maybe not in a court of law, maybe just in front of their liege lord or something, and they're trying to defend themselves and prevent themselves from either getting beheaded or imprisoned or whatever. And a single dice roll doesn't really cut it. It's a bit anticlimactic, right? So you want some sort of structure there to be able to handle these sorts of things. And yeah, Tales from the Loop provides a really great framework for that, and that's something I want to develop. I want to kind of put a little bit of thought into that, expand on it a little bit, and see what I can come up with there. Because if I do that, I don't need to think about anything crunchy relating to combat whatsoever, which isn't going to be very attractive to some people. I appreciate, but is what I want to do. And one thing I've thought about is I put this as the default, and then I'm already planning on producing a supplement to this game down the line for martial careers. So if you want to play Pitchfork, but with a mercenary company or with a band of raiders, you're going to play like a Viking game. There's nothing to say that the skill list and everything else in this game wouldn't fit, but it would need some changes to certain things. And some of the changes would be potentially more skills in certain areas. Certainly, just looking at careers and assigning the right skills to those would be needed. But certainly, combat would have a different focus. And I think that's something I really want to focus on in a more military-style game, or a more violence-centered, like a game that's more centered on violence, like a typical fantasy role-playing game. So I'm thinking that I develop a narrative structure here, which is more for the kind of core Pitchfork experience. And then in this supplement I'll be coming up with later, which may or may not ever happen, I don't know. I would actually put in some things I'm thinking about for a more kind of traditional turn-based initiative-influenced combat. And I actually have a lot of ideas around this. I've thought about this quite a bit, taking some cues from Mithras, for example, and some of the OSR games that are out there. So I've got a really interesting way of doing initiative, which I really like. And I have a really cool way of doing turn economy, or round economy, whatever you want to call it, which is based on Mithras. And I've apparently also based on Shadowrun, which I've never played. And that I've played Mithras. I've played a 3-session like scenario, like a mini campaign of Mithras, but using the Wolfrup setting, and it was really cool. I really liked it a lot. There's a lot of things going into my head that are influenced by that game I played fairly recently. But yeah, the combat, the turn structure is really cool there. And effectively, you have a certain number of action points. If you think like Fallout a little bit, you could have 2 to sort of 5, I guess, for any starting character. Most would have like 3. And these action points are used for any kind of action. If you're moving, if you're attacking, if you're defending yourself, all take 1 action. And the idea is you have a turn order when everyone goes, but on your turn you can only do 1 single action. And it basically, it kind of, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh my god, this sounds really slow and fiddly. But when we played it, fucking hell, it was like real-time combat. It was incredible. And if I end up going with the crunchy traditional style of combat, I'm probably going to be looking at Mithras for some inspiration and trying to give it a Year Zero engine treatment. So again, that'll be later. But for now, I want to stick with narrative conflict scenes, I'm going to call it, I guess. And I'm gonna try and come up with a general framework. Based on Tales from the Loop. I'm also then going to come up with a combat implementation for combat scenes and social conflict scenes, and finally chase scenes. If you're a commoner in a world that doesn't give a shit about whether you live or die, you're probably going to be running away from things that are scary a lot. So chasing needs to, like any good horror game, chasing needs to be really a big part of it. Then let's talk about trauma. And by trauma, I mean specifically wounds, stress, that sort of thing. And I've got an idea here. I want to have 2 separate pools, and I want it to be a little bit. I'm taking Coriolis as an inspiration here, which might sound a bit weird to people who know me, especially like Ibram. Although he just mentioned Coriolis in the chat. But the idea here is that you would have something called, for now, let's just call it health, and what's not stress, but what's the mental counterpoint to health? Stability. I don't know, mental stability. Oh, no. Lots of words going through my head right now. Health and stability works for now. The idea is that you have... again, I've put some thought into this already. The idea would be that you have, at character creation, a number of points to split as you wish, based on your age. So if we go back to the age section here, got skill points. You're going to get a certain number of skill points based on how old you are. And that means the older you are, the more skill points you're going to get. So if we say, oh God, I don't know, something like 30, 34, 38. Let's just put some random numbers in here. Let's make it nice and round for now. So the older you are, the more skilled you get. And then we talk about trauma points. And we'll say 14 is the base. If you're young, you've got 15. And if you're old, you've got 16. Oh, 13. Old. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't have attributes, so Coriolis has hit points and mind points, they're called. And it bases them on the number of... on your attributes. So your 2 physical attributes, strength and agility, you add them together, and that gives you your number of hit points. You look at your wits and empathy, add them together, and that gives you your number of mind points. Fine. I want something similar to that, but I'm not using attributes. So for me, 14, I'm kind of actually using some of the... this actual spread here, this 15, 14, and 13, I believe is the standard spread of attribute points from a standard Year Zero engine game. And I'm just going to quickly check that, actually. Because that would be embarrassing if it's not. I've got Warhammer open, of course, because I was talking about Warhammer earlier today with somebody. Let's pull up Forbidden Lands. No, Vazen, because I've got it right here. Okay. So, age. 15, 14, 13. Yeah, okay. My mind has not failed me. So if you're young, you get 15 attribute points. If you're middle-aged, you get 14. If you're old, you get 13. And that's pretty much the same in all their games, right? More or less. So I'm going with a similar sort of idea here for trauma points. Okay? And the idea is... where'd it go? Yeah. With the average being 14. So you split them between the two, right? So you might have, i.e., 8 vitality, 8 health, 6 stability. Or you could have 7 in each, yeah? 7 health, 7 stability. And I'll probably need to put a little caveat in here, which is each must be at least 5. So you can't put anything lower than 5 in there, okay? Or maybe might change it to 4, whatever, 4 or 5. And that's so people don't put they'll give themselves a stupid number of health points. Why am I putting? Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah, Ibram, I've come up with 6 or 7 different ideas for trauma. This is what I want to run with. I've actually put a lot of thought into this. Let's have a think though. Link your trauma to skills. All characters have X base, and then having Y dice and Z skill. Oh my god, can give you 1 more. So for example, in athletics, a 6 gives you +1. Yeah. It gets really confusing with, I mean, Might is an easy one for, I have a skill called Might, so Might should be able to give you additional health, for example. Athletics, again, if your athletics is high enough, if you're an athlete, then you're probably relatively healthy. So, again, that could be something like that. Stability, lore, if I look at the skill list again very quickly, lore is your learning, so that might make you a bit more, does it make you more mentally sound? Not necessarily. Insight, maybe, right? Insight is empathy with another person, or awareness, discovering something hidden, detecting an approaching threat, sensing when something is off. Awareness would be a good one, but it gets kind of hard to nail those down without attributes, so I'm less likely to do that. I like this approach because I've already put a lot of thought into it. So the idea here is that you've got these numbers here. Now, I've got two different ways of thinking about this. The first one I came up with was having critical injuries, so thinking just about health here, right? So let's look at health. So health would be critical injuries. If I want to do critical injuries. So there are two ways I can do this, right? That I've thought of. The first one is to use the Coriolis method, which is every weapon has a crit rating. And I kind of like this. It does mean a lot of work for me coming up with stats for weapons. It does mean more work for players in tracking an additional set of stats on a weapon. It adds a lot, though. It adds a hell of a lot. But one thing I want with critical injuries is, in fact, I should put this here first. Design principle. Must happen at any time, not just when broken. Okay? That's something they do that happens in Coriolis. I love that. I really, really want that to be the case. So there's the Coriolis method, then there's the Simbroom method. And the Simbroom method is you have a threshold. If the threshold, so health threshold, so health threshold determines big hits. And I kind of like this method, so I'm going to underline that for now. That's one I kind of want to think about. The idea is you have a fairly standard. If your health is 6, for example, let's use 7 and 7. Your health is 7. And if we're using the Simbroom method, it might be your threshold is half of your health rounded down, right? Because this is Grim, right? So with a health of 7, that means you have a health threshold of, I might even give that a different name, but your health threshold would be 3. If you were to ever take a hit for 3 or more damage, you would suffer an immediate critical injury. Okay? Pretty simple. You put that number on your character sheet. My threshold is 3. Anytime you get hit by something of that value, you take a critical injury straight away. If you get broken, if your health goes down to 0, you become broken, you also get a critical injury. If you're hit by a big hit that also makes you broken, you don't get 2 critical injuries, you only get the 1, right? So that's the thinking I've put into this. And I quite like I've thought of quite a few little scenarios in my head with how that could work, and I kind of like it. Where it loses out a little bit, I think, is with verisimilitude, where how does that make sense? How does being healthier, using the term health, I might change that. How does being healthier make you have more resistance to damage, which is effectively what I'm saying. Like, if you're not going to get an injury, yeah. So there are a few ways I could do this. I could take out the health threshold, and I could just say any hit that does more than 3 or more damage is going to do a critical injury. So that's the other method. The other method is all big hits do a critical. So say over 3 damage. But I don't like that so much because I want to include critical injury tables in this game. I love critical injury tables. They add a lot of flavor to a game, and I really want to include them. However, it doesn't make sense if you're being punched really hard by somebody, for example, and they get a really lucky roll and they get 3 damage on you. That doesn't make sense to me that should theoretically have the opportunity to land a critical injury and kill you. Sure, if your health goes down to 0, then fair game. But normally, no. So that's what I'm thinking. So I'm underlining the Simbroom method because I like that. It means that the more thought you put into character creation, the more thought you put into being a bigger, tougher sort of. In fact, fuck this. We're not going to call it health. We're going to call it I'm gonna call this toughness. Okay, just to use a Wolfrup term for now. Toughness and cool, which is basically hit points and mind points. All right. Because toughness then makes a little bit more sense to me. So it's all about semantics here. Okay? Yeah. So with the Simbrew method, if you're tougher, you're going to be able to take bigger hits, right? If you've only put let's say 4 points into, 4 or 5 points into your toughness, then, yeah, a hit of 2 or more is going to give you a critical injury, which is pretty brutal. But then that makes sense to me. I'm happy with that. And I want to do something similar with cool, or we could call it sanity, or we could call it stability, whatever you want. Sanity is a loaded term, so probably not going to use that one. But I'm just putting it there so people kind of roughly know what I'm talking about here. And for this, I'm kind of wanting to use the Vazen method here, which is critical mental injuries, as they're called in Vazen. I really like these. And I'm thinking, just to make things flow nicely, is to use the same, the same method as above. So the more mentally robust you are, the more you're able to withstand big, like, stressful attacks against your psyche, right? That's the thinking. So I want to playtest that. That's damage. The damage of a punch would be 1 as a base. Every success you get. So the way it works in Year Zero engine is weapons have damage values, and anytime you roll the dice for an attack, the number of successes, if you get 1 success, you do weapon damage. Every additional success you get can be used to choose a number of stunts, they're usually called. And one of those stunts you can choose is additional damage. So for a punch, if you're punching somebody and you just got a single 6, you do 1 point of damage. If you rolled like 3 or 4 6s, which is a really good roll, then you can do potentially a really massive, knock the guy out or whatever. And that would work here. The one thing I'm thinking about here, though, with different types of weapons is that possibly I need to have... like Forbidden Lands might need... Oh, I don't really want to do this, but I might need to do it. Critical injury tables per weapon type. Per damage type. For example, blunt, slash, etc. And there's actually a lot of cool resources I can lean into for this. There were some fan-made critical injury tables for 2nd edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which are D100 tables with like 6 or 7 different damage types laid out. So for inspiration, I can look into a bunch of stuff like that. Forbidden Lands has 3. It has blunt, slash, and something else. Can't remember. Anyway, but that would mean like if you just have the single one, it gets a bit harder to track these things. If you have all right, yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can handle this. Let's look at Vazen as an example in design, right? So Vazen has these critical injury tables, which are here. Right? Now, let's think that this covers being shot by a bullet, it covers being punched in the face, it covers being stabbed by a sword. One set of tables. It doesn't matter how you're being injured, right? And they've kept it really, really generic here, right? They don't say... When it says jaw injury, it doesn't say broken jaw or let's look at another ear injury. I don't know, sliced ear or something. Because how would you slice someone's ear off if you're punching them? or shooting them or something like that. However, you do get things like you get a dirty wound, bleeding wound, crushed genitals, punctured eye, ruptured bowel, deep arm gash, burst artery, internal bleeding. Most of these would work. Caved in forehead works for blunt force trauma. Doesn't work as much for being shot, I would suggest. But yeah, this is a really, really good set of critical injuries that are generic enough that you can flavor them based on the type of weapon that was used. And for me, that's actually kind of how I think I want to go about it, is to try and keep it generic and to try and keep three things in my head, right? One is bearing in mind this is fantasy level. One is blunt force trauma. One is sharp weapon trauma. And one is projectile trauma. So being pierced by like an arrow or a crossbow bolt, something like that. Or if you're playing Wolfrup, it could be being shot by a pistol because they have gunpowder weapons, or black powder weapons as they're called. So this is a good starting point to use, I think. So I'm going to just cross this out because it's too much work to do that. I'm going to just go with use Vaesen as basis, but tweak specifically for various damage types. And then in brackets, blunt, bladed, piercing. And I could even say, what's a word for animalistic? I'll just put animalistic. Which would be like claws. Claws are being bitten by an animal. Okay. Pierce. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you're curious about how Forbidden Lands works, we're running it on this show once a month. So we've had 2 sessions already. Anyway, we haven't had any critical injuries yet, so that hasn't yet come up in play. I do say yet. As in I expect them to come up at some point, potentially. Okay. Let's see. What should I... Okay, so I wanted to kind of really put this down because this is something I put some thought into. I want specific things to happen. I want there to be... critical injuries. I want there to be, for both mental and physical trauma, if you want to call it that, or health. And I really want there to be a way to have them happening outside of just being broken. I think that's one thing that makes Coriolis really exciting. And one other thing I didn't mention here, which is how does being injured relate to modifiers, negative modifiers to your dice pool? Because that's another really cool element of the Year Zero engine, right? You have Mutant Year Zero and Forbidden Lands. As soon as you take damage, your attributes are reduced. You have Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood. When you have damage, it goes to conditions, and as soon as any condition that is ticked is a -1 to any relevant any relevant test, any relevant roll. And Vaesen has the same approach. Vaesen has it where it also has conditions, 3 physical and 3 mental conditions. Anytime any of them are ticked, you get a negative modifier to either a mental or a physical roll. And they stack as well. So if you have 2 conditions ticked, you're at -2 dice for everything that's rolled. I want something similar here, but I think if we're calling this toughness, I want this to be like a little level of soak, like in Coriolis. And I can either handle it one of 2 ways. I can either handle it like the Vaesen way. The Vaesen way is you would write down it down on your character sheet. Then you would write down this defect. So, for example, if you have a fracture, you then have a false joint. That's the defect that comes after it. Or let's use another one, knee injury. You have a skewed walk, which is like a limp, right? And that's going to affect your agility. So you're going to have -1 to your agility as like a permanent... is that permanent? I think the defects are permanent. It's on the next page. No, it's up to the GM to decide. So if it's going to come into play, the GM can say, right, well, you have a skewed walk because you had a knee injury before, right? You've healed from that knee injury, but your kneecap was busted, right? And I'm talking here like medieval times. Nothing's going to be healed perfectly. I'm talking low fantasy with, like, I'm not even thinking about putting magic into this game, right? No magic. I should have probably said that at the very beginning. There won't be magic in this game. If you notice the list of careers, there was nothing relating to even like hedge wizards or anything like that. There was a herbalist, but that's very much like a herbalist, somebody who goes and gathers herbs and makes potions to heal people's ills. So yeah, there won't be any kind of magical potions you can quaff to magically heal your injuries. You're gonna live with that injury. It's gonna define who you are. And I kind of like the approach here in Vaesen, which is, you pick up these injuries as time goes on, and they're gradually going to, the GM can basically, if they apply, the GM can say, right, well, because of your crooked arm, you can't you can't use a bow as well, so you've got a -1 to your ranged combat. Because your face has been deformed from your facial injury, your manipulation, or in this case it'd probably be charm, your charm is going to be at -1, because it's really hard to charm people when you've got like a scar going like straight down the side of your face. So I'm thinking Vaesen really works really well for that. I don't even need to put an additional thing on. It becomes relative to the injury, and injuries are the things that kind of define you. But this will need playtesting. Definitely will need playtesting, because I think here's the thing, right? I think it's gonna feel less harsh in that when you take damage, your dice pool gets reduced, but your dice pools are going to be quite significantly reduced anyway at the very start. So I'm kind of okay with that. I'm kind of okay with having this more traditional feeling hit points and mind points sort of pools, but having critical injuries in there as permanent things to mark down on your character that can permanently reduce your dice pool in relevant situations. I think that's a really good approach. Right, let's see. Different, just reading up in here. Different armors can be good against different types of injuries. Ringmail stops pierce. Oh, yeah. Yep. I need to think about how to do that. Different kinds of attacks. Do you need to have different types of attacks? I don't know. It depends on the level of granularity you want to go down. I don't think... We talk about different groups of injuries. I think that might have been a reference to when I was talking about using the blunt bladed piercing, etc. But I'm kind of talking about not doing that. I want the critical injuries to be generic enough that you can just tailor it to whatever the person's attacking you with. So the idea is that this stays narrative. The person is attacking you with an axe. That means when you roll they hit you really hard, you take a critical injury, you roll a 35, severed fingers. Okay, well that makes sense. Their axe chops your fingers off. It's a bad example. Let's look at ear injury. Right? They slice an ear off with the axe. Your ear is sliced off. If they had punched you, then maybe the ear injury is inside your ear. They've like disrupted your ear canal or your eardrum or something, and you have impaired balance as a result. So your inner ear is damaged somehow permanently. Yeah, I don't think you don't need to look at things like how armor reacts with damage types. That would be in a crunchier combat system, which again I will be coming up with in a supplement, not for the main one. But yes, as Ibram is saying there, Forbidden Lands has a whole... in fact, I'll just flash it up, because it has a whole way of doing this already. And so if I was going to do a system like that, that would be the first place I would look. Forbidden Lands. It's in the Player's Handbook. Let's pull that up, and let's go to Combat and Damage, and it's under Close Combat. There's a table I'm looking for. Okay, so the chainmail, for example, it has an armor rating of 6, but if it's being used against arrows or stab attacks, it's less effective. So it's got half the armor rating. That's actually the only thing that's there. But it does have a matrix here for how... Let me pull it up. Oh, no, I'm thinking of close... I'm thinking of the advanced combat action, which is this thing here. Anyway, there's a whole range of traits that come up with weapons. For example, if you want to try and disarm somebody, if you have a weapon that has the hook talent, which I think is in here. Nope. You want to trying to remember where it is. Okay, slow actions, slash, stab. So you have different action types for the different type of weapon you're using, right? So not every weapon has the edged or the blunt features, which you can use to slash somebody. Stab, you need to have a weapon with a pointed feature, right? And then you can do the stab thing. And these relate to whether they can be dodged or parried, how much of a parry bonus they get, how much shields come into play with it, that sort of thing. It's a fair level of crunch. I don't plan on doing anything like that. Wolfrip has magic. Wolfrip has horrible magic system. That's why I don't really want to touch it here. Again, I will probably do a supplement for Pitchfork that specifically addresses magic, because if I want to do magic, I'm going to put the appendix here. Magic. The appendices are actually more like to add later, or we can call it a wish list. Life path generation, military supplement with trad combat rules. Magic would be my Year Zero mini method, which is freeform magic. Take trauma, successes cancel. I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I flash up Year Zero mini, this is how I would handle magic if I wanted to do magic. Give me 1 second. Okay, so here's Year Zero mini. So you can ignore some of this, but basically the idea be you know how to use a type of magic. And I don't want spell lists. I want to avoid spell lists. This is something I really feel passionately about in magic systems. I hate spell lists. It's something I don't like. If I'm going to create a game, a fantasy game that has magic, I don't want spell lists in it. When I was developing Nord Saga had a form of rune magic in it, which I really liked. Put a lot of time and effort into developing that. But the idea is here that you don't spell what can and can't be done with the power, and you want this is pitch at the GM, by the way, and encourage player imagination and creativity, right? So an idea might be, in fact, when we did playtesting of this Year Zero minigame, we did a sort of Victorian fantasy setting, and one of our PCs was an illusion mage. So the idea was she could do anything that she could think of that had to do with illusion-based magic, right? So she couldn't directly manipulate the physical plane, but she could make people see things that weren't really there. She could make sounds happen that weren't really there, and that sort of thing. Create illusions. And the idea is, and this is the important bit here, to use a power, trauma is inflicted. The number inflicted scaling with how powerful the spell is. So the idea being, you want to cast a really powerful spell, it's going to take a toll on your body, right? And this is what I would go with. And the idea here is that the spell is always cast, it's always, but it always requires a roll, right? So, yeah. So I'd have to create, if I was going to do magic, I'd have to create like a channeling spell probably, unless I could fit it into one of the existing skills. Like I could say magic is tied to, let's make it feel like swords and sorcery, right? So you have to commune with spirits or demons or something like that to command them to allow you to use their power. So you could use the command skill for casting magic, for example. Anyway, the idea is that you have a roll that you make, And the roll, if it's successful, every 6 that you roll will cancel out one of those trauma you take from it. So the more experienced you are, the more skilled you are at casting magic, the less likely it is that you're going to be hurting yourself. But there's still always that chance. Yeah. And that was it. It worked really well, actually, in playtesting. I really liked it. If I'm going to use it in a narrative game like this, that's the form I would use. So that's how I would do magic. Mystical things. So magic will... this will come probably in the GM section of this game when it eventually gets produced. Magic will be a part of the setting. It'll be an assumed part of the setting that's going to go along with this. But magic will only be in the hands of NPCs or monsters. It won't be something that the players can actively channel or tap into. I disagree, Melty, that it's easier to skip that and just say, I don't know what you mean by skip that, if you're talking to me or to Ibram. If you're talking about what I was saying, and just say pointed is piercing, blunt is, blunt, whatever. Or unless you're talking about forbidden lens, I don't know. Sorry, I was kind of on a roll there. Forbidden lens has slash or stab attack options in defense matrix. Yeah, blunt weapons are considered slash, but use a blunt injuries table. Yeah. Okay. Right. Got 15 minutes left. I might go a little bit over, especially if people want to stay on. So let's actually try and put some more ideas in here. So let's look at the skills. Like how the skills section in Year Zero games is also the core rules of the game. So it starts usually with how skill tests are done, right? So the skill list, we've already talked about it. I'm going to get rid of that. Just going to try and keep this as brief as possible for playtesting. Rolling the dice, you roll, you take your skill. In fact, I'm going to try and make this as literally as brief as possible. Skill plus help, if you've got it, plus gear equals dice pool. Gear is probably going to happen a little bit more than help. I don't know. Help. I'll just put plus modifiers. 6s mean success. You need 1 6. You need to roll 1 6 to succeed. Multiple 6s trigger stunts. Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to do stunts. Yeah. The idea being, though, the more 6s you have, the more you like the greater the degree of your success, or you can do additional things with it. The art of failure, failing forward is going to be a thing here. Failing forward important. Look at Vazen for what do they call them there? I think it's called something like complications. No, it's called consequences. I'm not gonna remember it off the top of my head. Let's pull it up. Consequences, conditions, requirements. So here would be consequences, trauma, requirements. Though not always. So the idea in Vazen is that it gives guidance to say the story must go on, right? And I really like this. It's saying this: do not allow the story to come to a standstill. It could happen that... Well, whatever. Anyway, it's giving some examples here. But it says, when a failed test threatens the flow of the story, there are 3 methods the GM can use to salvage the situation. It's not saying every single time a test is failed, do one of these 3 things. It's saying, no, only when something is possibly going to bring your story crashing to a halt, you want to tap into one of these 3 methods. The first one is consequences, which means you actually succeed at what you were doing, but there is something bad that happens as a result. Pretty straightforward, right? The second one is you succeed, you achieve what you're trying to do, but you have taken some sort of trauma. And the final one is that you get some of what you wanted, but there's some additional requirements that are needed to get the full success. Now, I don't actually really like this fully myself. I like the concept behind it. What I don't like about it specifically is I think if you fail your roll, you shouldn't be allowed to succeed. I think there should be some element of well, that's not true. In horror games especially, you need to lay the stakes out at the start. So for me, I think the thing is stakes are important, right? And that means if you're going to be making a roll to try and, like, if you're making an investigation roll, for example, right? Investigation is an important roll to try and search for clues, right? And if you don't find those clues, the story can't go on. Now we can tap into Gumshoe here. With Gumshoe, basically will always allow you to get at least a little bit of a clue no matter what happens. But the more successes you get, if, like, to use Year Zero terminology, the better the quality of the clue, or you might get more than one clue from the crime scene or whatever you're looking at, right? And the same concept goes here. So the GM could spell that out at the beginning and say, I'm going to require a roll here. You're going to succeed no matter what. However, if you only get if you fail the roll, you're barely going to succeed, or you're going to have succeed at a cost. And I think there's a time and a place for that. But it kind of, the way it's pitched in Vaesen makes it sound almost like it should happen more often than not, and that's something I disagree with. I think that should only be really used for very, very specific moments in the game. Risk for one or more trauma per casting a spell. I'm not developing a magic system here. So yeah. I don't think trauma is too deadly. I think trauma is just right. In a low fantasy game where doing anything that has the risk of causing you bodily harm, I already feel like it's more generous than most other Year Zero games, in that when you just take general trauma, nothing is being touched with your dice pools. Every other Year Zero game, that is the case. In this one, it only happens when you take a critical. So no, I don't think it's too deadly. I think it's just right. And yeah, rare magic is absolutely something I would be putting into any of the games I make. Nord Saga, it's extremely rare. In this game, it would be extremely rare. The idea being, I don't like high fantasy, and like Forbidden Lands is high fantasy in my opinion. It's dark fantasy, but it's high, and I like Forbidden Lands a lot, but it wouldn't be I probably wouldn't call the setting. I don't know. I like the setting actually a lot too. But my preference tends to be for very low fantasy. And when I say low fantasy, I mean low fantasy as in not a lot of magic. Or if there's magic, it's in the hands of the elite, or it's untouchable by the protagonists. So let's not go down a magic rabbit hole, because I'm not going to be approaching magic in this playtest whatsoever. As I said, I put it in the appendix there. If I was to approach it, I would be doing that method I've talked about as the initial pass. And there would be tons of playtesting to go into that to make sure it fits right with the rest of the Pitchfork system. But it might not work. I don't know. Chances of success, straight out of any of the Year Zero engine games, right? We got tables to I can just copy over. Pushing your roll. So pushing, I haven't talked about this yet because it's tied to trauma. Pushing is going to be very simple. It's going to basically be you take 1 point of trauma to push. Applied after the roll. The player can decide on which trauma, with GM having final say. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I like giving the player a little bit of choice here because I don't have attributes to tap into, and it could be that you've mentally stressed yourself rather than hurting yourself even on a physical challenge. I could see a case for that in many circumstances. That's a nice easy way to handle pushing. It it brings a cost into play with it as well, which I also like. And again, this is a very similar system to how it works in Vaesen and in Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood. So pretty straightforward. Conditions, I'm not going to be using conditions at all. Maybe. God. So this would be things like hungry, thirsty, tired, etc. Don't know. I've got 2 levels of difficulty here for some reason. Oh, yeah. This is from Vaesen, and at first I didn't like it, but I actually do quite like it now. Maybe. No, I'm not going to use it. Okay, so let me just talk about this a little bit. Vaesen has something which is very unusual for Year Zero engine games in that it has levels of difficulty. In fact, it's right here, which is nice and easy. And it's saying in extreme cases, the GM may decide that it takes more than one success to succeed. So you can actually put a target number of successes on a roll, 1, 2, or 3. The reason I don't like this for Pitchfork, I don't think it's a good fit for Pitchfork, is because the odds of you rolling 2 successes are going to be really low, generally speaking, in a game where I've reduced the dice pools. So for something like Vaesen or any of the other Forbidden Lands or Mutant Year Zero or Coriolis, you could use something like this. Just like you could just plug this in and say, actually, I'm gonna require. This is harder than normal, the thing that you're trying to do. So I'm gonna ask for 2 successes. The cool thing about this is that you are not taking dice out of a dice pool ever. And I like that. That means that there are no negative modifiers. There's no -2 to your dice pool, or -1 to your dice pool, or -3 to your dice pool. You don't have to think about negative dice or anything like that. It's pretty much anytime there's a modifier, you're throwing dice into your dice pool. And if you want to add some sort of extreme element of difficulty, you require more than 1 success. So it could kind of work. And it might be something I come back to. In fact, I'm going to probably leave it here. Put a question mark next to it. TBC. Vaesen. If I go for it. Skeptical. Due to reduced dice pools. Yeah, as I said, Forbidden Lands can add or remove dice for modifiers. Vaesen doesn't remove ever. You can add dice for modifiers in Vaesen, but you never remove dice. They're never taken away. That's the kind of the point I'm making, and I quite like that. But again, it kind of requires a bigger dice pool. And the other reason when I first read it, I didn't like it, is one of the great things about the Year Zero engine that I really like is that you don't need to count target successes. If you were to look at a game like Degenesis or Burning Wheel or Shadowrun, these are games or World of Darkness, these are games that have dice pools, they count successes, but they all have target numbers of successes. So the GM has to arbitrarily, or has to come up with a number of successes depending on the test. And they generally lend themselves well to games that have big dice pools, because if you need more than 1 success, you need to be rolling a lot of dice, or you need to have like a 4, 5, and a 6 be a success criteria on the dice. The one thing I really like about the Year Zero engine thing is that you don't ever have to do that. It's always straightforward. You just need a single 6 in your dice pool, and you succeed. It's super simple. I could play with my 4-year-old. In fact, I have played a very modified dummy version of the Year Zero engine, where we just had a couple of dice, and I was like, "Oh, what are you good at? Are you strong?" And he was a cat and I was a dog, right? We're pretending to be animals. Stealing fish from a polar bear is what he wanted to play. Whatever. And I was the dog, I was the strong one, and he was the cat, he was the fast one. So anytime he wanted to try and do something that was fast, he would roll 2 dice, and he just needed to get a single 6 to succeed. He can understand that as a 4-year-old, right? He's only at the stage where he can count the pips on the dice to know it's a 6, and he can already figure out like the basic year zero engine mechanic. If I was to like have him require counting sixes, I'm sure he could probably handle it as well, but it's an extra level of complexity that kind of slows things down because the GM has to think about whether that's needed, and people have to think about like, oh, I didn't. So what does one success mean? What does a success mean when I need 3? That's another thing I don't like. There's a kind of a mental hurdle you have to jump over to kind of buy into it, which is like, okay, a 6 means a success. But if I get 2 6s in my roll and I needed 3 to succeed, what does that mean? That means I failed, but I rolled 2 successes. I prefer it to be a bit simpler in that respect. Conditions take dice away, sure. And in this instance, critical injuries are going to take dice away, right? So it's kind of similar in that regard. The thing I have to think about is how I'm going to do negative modifiers. I know Ibram is reading the Vaesen rules like front to back again. Like he's already done it once. I think he's doing a second read through. So I'm gonna ask him to pitch in here. What happens for positive modifiers? Is there like a way you can just add dice other than help? I know helping is the standard year zero help. Other than that, is there a way to add dice? Do you know? I don't think I came across it. Advantage. Oh, okay. It has advantage. Right. Okay. Yeah. It has this like narrative thing that you can spend once per session. So it's specific to a mystery, and it may use once per session. It's kind of like the agendas from Alien, and it allows you to what does it allow you to do here? 2 extra dice when you make a skill test. So that's how it does it, right? I need to put some thought into this. We're running out of time. So helping each other, I'm going to use a mix of Vaesen and Coriolis with a command skill. Parallel actions. I think I might have just copied this from Vaesen when I wrote this down. What did it have? Parallel actions. Oh, right. Yeah, or group actions. Everyone rolls is what the... I'll put a question mark against that. Group actions a la Forbidden Lands might be better. Opposed rolls are going to be exactly like Vaesen. Vaesen does a slightly different thing with this, where it's not about who has. You need oh god. I don't want to go down. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. So you and your opponent make a roll. The person with the most successes prevails. Should both of you get an equal number, you have neither succeeded nor failed. Okay. If your opponent is NPC, you may use one of these methods described under failed rolls. And that's the conditions, consequences, and requirements we talked about before. You get what you want, but something goes wrong. In a conflict between 2 player characters where both roll the same number of successes, each may choose to push the roll to win. If you get the same number of successes, you have to agree to compromise. Both get something they want, but at a cost. Now, there's a couple of things I'm thinking about here with opposed rolls. So Vaesen is the default. But we might look at, comparing next highest die in pool to break a tie. So there is always a winner. Should be pretty straightforward. That means advantage. Need to think about this. Adding dice is the easy option. As in Forbidden Lands or Coriolis. Not going Vaesen route. extra successes. I'm basically done with this section, so as soon as it's finished, we'll just answer the last questions that come in here. Extra successes. TBC, defined, possibly defined under each skill. Bit of work for me, but that might be the best way of handling this. Possibly defining, we'll just call them stunts here. Okay, and that's, I think I'm going to leave it here because I'm running out of time. The one thing I did want to mention, there's one other mechanic I wanted to talk around, which is something I came up with. My first game I ever played was West End Games Star Wars, and it has something called the second edition has something called the Wild Die. And I was thinking that that could be something that could fit in the Year Zero engine, and it could come into play in a number of different ways. So it's something I might be thinking about playing with in Pitchfork. However, I also think I'm not thinking of using it like the West End Games Star Wars version, which is has quite a pulpy feel to it. So I'm not sure whether I want to bring it into Pitchfork. I think it might be a better fit for Mousepunk, which is the other game I'm going to be making, which is a bit more like Mad Max and a bit more actiony, a bit more like, just a bit more of an actiony feel to it, but still kind of grim and gritty and harsh. And I think it could fit in a lot better in Mousepunk than it would necessarily fit in here in Pitchfork. So for now, I'm going to leave it out. But just wanted to kind of mention that there is this this thing I've been playing around with in my mind, which is this thing which I'm calling the effect die. And it's effectively, if you're rolling a pool of dice, you just make sure that one dice is always a specific, like your specific effect die, right? Or like a wild die. Call it a wild die if you want. It might be a yellow die. It might be a special, like, multicolored die, whatever. It's a specific die. You always know which one it is when you're rolling your dice pool. And every single time you roll a skill test, you're including, in fact, probably most times you're rolling any test, you're rolling this effect die in that pool. And it can be used for things like, if you get a success, but your effect die is a 1, then you have a success with a complication, for example. If you're rolling, you could use it for things like critical injuries, where you don't need to roll again for a critical injury. You could say the critical. That gets tricky though, because then you need a 6. If you need a 6 and it's on the wild die, but you could basically say if you have a D66 table, so let's pull up the Vazen one here again. You could say the tens digit for the D66 is your wild die in the roll when the attack was happening, and then the GM might roll a second die for the ones place. So if you rolled a 6, let's say the GM did something, right? So the GM rolled an attack against you from an NPC, and the GM got a 6. You know it's going to be bad, but then how bad exactly that is up to you. Is it going to be a crushed chest? Is it going to be instant death? Something like that. You need to, if you roll a 6, you know it's going to be bad. But if you roll a 1, you're in a coma. That's not much better, but at least it's not instant death. So there could be ways to handle it like that. Or if it's an opposed roll, for example, then you could, the GM has a wild die or like an effect die, and so does the PC. Then that can be the deciding factor in a tie, right? You look at the effect die, and if it's a tie in the number of successes and it's a tie on the effect die, then it is actually a tie and you resolve it normally. So there's lots of ways you could use this effect die. It's included in every die roll, so it's already there, and you're just using it for a little bit of extra information. And the reason I'm thinking about that is because there's a lot of clever things you can do in D100 systems, because there are 2 dice always being rolled where you can flip them around, you can read certain things off of those die, and we're rolling a bunch of dice every time we're rolling rolling dice in Year Zero engine games. So why not try and include something similar here? And the effect die is a great way of doing that. And this kind of feels a little bit like a D100 hack, if you will, Pitchfork. So kind of trying to add something that feels a little bit like a D100 die feels like something that could be a good fit. Again, however, I don't. I did think about this for quite a while over the past couple of weeks, and in the end, I don't like every kind of application I thought of it just felt gimmicky, felt like it would slow things down a little bit, or add a level of complexity or crunch I didn't think worked for what it was adding. And I think its applications are better suited towards something with a little bit more of an actiony feel to it, like Mousepunk. So I'll be using it there. I think I'm going to stop there, I think. So I'll just have a quick look at the chat because I just was ignoring it for the last few minutes. Yeah, your mystery advantage. Talked about that. Advantages are very mystery specific. Yeah, gear can help. I've already said that actually here as well with skills where rolling the dice, gear is going to give you a modifier. So that's it. That's where I'm at. I put a little bit of thought into this. I am going to try and I am going to continue to put a little bit of thought and development into this in between sessions. But I'm going to be trying to talk about the stuff that I've done in between, during the next diary, if you will. Just because if I only do it in 2-hour stints, it's going to take a long time to get anywhere. For example, coming up with this list of skills took me hours and hours, like probably 8 to 10 hours to come up with that list, believe it or not. Coming up with this list of archetypes was again another 8 to 10 hours. Now, that's boring stuff where I'm looking at lots of different things. I'm looking at other games. I'm looking at some medieval reference books that I have, trying to come up with a good list of things, trying to think about how the archetypes work. And really, that's an iterative process. And once I have the skills down, I'm also looking at scrubbing the archetypes and the occupations, for example, to try and fit in with that. That whole process takes a lot of time. And if I was just to do it on air, I would never get anywhere. It would be really boring to watch as well. So things like that, where I need to make decisions on things, or I need to think about lists of things, I will be working on those offline, and I can show you what I've come up with during the streams, but I won't be developing them there. So there will be a bit more to do with development and talking about what I've come up with in future ones. I think what I'll probably try and focus on for the next session. Let's just think about what I've come up with so far. I've got a pretty good idea of how dice are going to be rolled, right? You roll your skill, you add a gear number of dice according to your gear bonus and any modifiers, and that gives you your dice pool. You need a single success, 6 to succeed. Blah 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 blah. Okay, I think I can probably just finish off the skill section offline, and that can be done before the next session. Sorry, before the next diary. Conflict and trauma, I've got a pretty good idea of when I went there. I don't think I need to put a lot of more development work into there live. Trappings, I can start coming up with some ideas. I can do that. I can talk about trappings in the next one, what I want from them, but not actually come up with a list, because again, that's going to be something that takes a long time. But I can talk about the different methods I want to go through and what I want to select, for example. The rest of this is kind of setting based, the town, the realm. Adversaries, I could talk a little bit about. In fact, I might move adversaries up. So I'm talking specifically about the setting. Yeah, so I'm talking about the setting after I finish talking about monsters and stuff. Yeah. I was just about to start putting stuff in because I've got ideas for adversaries that I want to do. I won't forget about them, but that's something I can talk about live. One thing that might be cool is I can probably put a little bit of finishing touches on coming up with your commoner. Talk about how I want this stuff to kind of fall out. One thing I didn't talk about was, I'm not sure where I would mention this. Probably here somewhere. Would be, oh god, meta currency. I don't know where that would come into play. It wouldn't be in before careers. It'd be in the skills section. Pushing your roll, probably here. So let's talk about meta currency. If you don't know what that means, that basically means willpower points, it means darkness points, it means luck points, mutation points, story points, etc. TBD. I have some ideas. I might be using quite possibly luck points, lunch points. I need to go to bed. Luck points from Year Zero Mini, which felt amazing, which are based on FFG Star Wars Force Points. And we'll leave that there as a little teaser. All right. Advancement. Did I have that in there? Under here? No, I didn't put it in here. All right. Let's put that in. All right. That'll be me. So if you got any questions, now's the time to ask them. Thanks, Attila. Yeah, it might seem a little bit slapdash, but it's something I've been putting a lot of time into. Most of my time between the last diary and this diary has been involved in coming up with skills and archetypes and occupations, and also thinking about the trauma system. So yeah, it kind of all ties together. I think it's coming together into something I think I really like the look of. One thing I might do is I might come up with a character sheet, a very, very ugly, like, text-based character sheet, possibly, or I might actually draw one by hand. This is what I usually do. I have a scanner here at home. What I tend to do is what I have done in the past is I have sketched on a piece of paper how I want something to look, and then I can do that as like a rough prototype. I can scan it, and then I can flash it up on screen as well to show what I'm thinking about with how characters are going to look. But ultimately, I will be using one of many tools. I'll either be using Photoshop or possibly Affinity Publisher or maybe Affinity Designer to do the final character sheet. But because I like character sheets, I've made a ton of character sheets in the past. It's something I enjoy doing. I will probably come up with a nice looking character sheet for the playtest as well. So it won't be a kind of very plain, basic one. All right. So, any questions about anything? Would you like me to focus on something specific next for the next diary, maybe? Now's the time to ask. Finish my beer at the end as well. That's good. What do characters do? Yeah, we can talk about that. I've got a little bit of that at the beginning here. Your player characters will be confronted with problems that cannot be ignored and will not be solved by your betters. A family member is wrongfully accused of a heinous crime. An influential noble is performing human sacrifice in the nearby woods. A creature of nightmares lurks in the shadows, picking off the sick and elderly. So I kind of have 3 ideas here for playtesting scenarios, if you will. That was kind of a deliberate thing to do. The other thing I thought I've done is with the group concept. It's easy to come up with plot hooks when you do that. So we'll talk about that. I can talk about that. So yeah, adventure ideas. I mean, I've got that anyway here. As adventure seeds is a section I want to talk about. Yeah, I can have a little think about that, and we can talk about that too. So why don't I focus that as the next session, for the next session, and I can put a little bit of more flesh on the bones of what I've already done. Cool. So that's 3 of you anyway, kind of all saying the same thing. So that will be the focus, I guess. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna put draw a line in the sand and call it a night. So thank you everyone who was involved in the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube after the event, this has been streamed live on Twitch, I should say. The links are all, as you can see, at the bottom in the kind of graphic at the bottom of this video. So if you want to catch up and you want to be involved with chatting with me as I'm developing stuff, if you want to disagree with what I'm doing or have suggestions, or you want to influence a little bit of my design process, the way to do it is to basically be here live. So I'm going to be doing these on Sunday evenings, European time. So right now that's 9 to 11 p.m. European time, and it probably after the daylight savings has changed, I'll probably still stick to the 9 to 11 p.m. slot. So it'll change slightly where it is in relation to GMT. But that's a good time for me on a Sunday. So if you can make it, that'd be cool. I'm trying to stick with a regular slot on a Sunday. I'm trying to stick with a Sunday because it seems like wherever you are in the world, unless you're in Australasia, most people will be able to tune in and watch. One quick question has just popped up. Are you making tables for rolling sites like Forbidden Lands, Dungeons? Kind of. Forbidden Lands is about hex crawling and exploration. Pitchfork is not about that at all. So I won't be doing dungeons. I might be doing towns and villages. There will definitely be a village generator. I've already thought about doing that. Beyond that, I don't know. There's a number of things I need to think about and have to decide on what I want in terms of, like what level do I want to be doing random generation for? Because it takes a lot of time to come up with these things, to come up with compelling tables for all that. I can certainly do it for a village, but when you start adding in a bunch of other things, the question focuses around how important is that going to be with... In fact, this is probably something that's really good to talk about next week. Because if my game is about something where you need to be rolling random... be creating random sites, then yeah, that would be an important thing to think about. But this isn't going to be about that. This is going to be about building your... The main thing this is going to come into play with is going to be for players to build the town that they're a part of when they start. In fact, that's why I have this section here called the town. And one thing I wanted to put in there was guidance for players to come up with their town. And there will be random tables for that, but of course you can just choose stuff as well. So that's more important to me than exploring and finding like, okay, the GM's going to roll for some random thing, because this is not Mutant Year Zero. It's not Forbidden Lands. It's not a hex crawl. It is very much a commoner, a peasant simulator, if you will. And peasants don't do a lot of traveling. They don't do a lot of hex crawling. So, yeah. Yes, players are... Yes, that's the whole thing behind the name, Pitchfork. Here, right at the first sentence in the introduction. It focuses on commoners trying to get out of bad situations alive. This isn't easy when the world is determined to keep you mired in the mud. So, yeah. Cool. I've mentioned Mousepunk a few times. Mousepunk is the other game I'll be developing. I was originally planning on developing it simultaneously with Pitchfork, but I've got something else I'm working on, and I can't really be working on two things at the same time. It takes up too much brain space. So Mousepunk will be something I'll start developing after this is in playtesting phase. And that is very much going to be an exploration-based game. Yeah, the idea is that it's Mad Max mixed with Mouse Guard, and the concept that players are playing are like Max Rocksteady. They are itinerant travelers wandering the wasteland, going from settlement to settlement, traders, raiders, etc., with no real alliances, and they will inevitably be caught up in social intrigue between mouse settlements and rat settlements and all the rest of it. But yeah, for that, definitely they're going to be, because it's going to be a post-apocalyptic game in our own world, there will be like the ruins of human civilization that these mice are going to be traveling around in. So that would be something that I will be developing for that. These random things, but not for Pitchfork. All right, that's me done. So thank you very much for watching, and yeah, you know where to catch me. All the links are there in the video. I'll be putting them in various descriptions and things as well. So if you want to come and chat, the place I'm most active is Discord. So if you want to follow the Discord link there, join our little community there, and I'm happy to chat about all this stuff. There's quite a few people in there at the moment, so considering this is a new channel. So yeah, thanks very much. And you said see you in 2 weeks. I'm actually going to be doing this again next week, I think. Let me just check my calendar before I confirm that. And I have some other things to announce, actually. Some exciting things to announce. Let me just check about next week before I announce it. But it is related to this channel. Ibram, you still there? And if you are you cool for me to say something? You know what I'm talking about. Cool. Ibram's still there. Let's wait for the thumbs up or whatever. But, yeah. Long story short, I'm going to be doing this again. Yeah, the delay's bad. I know. Long story short, I am going to be doing this next week. So there's only going to be 1 week before I'm doing the next design diary. Then there are going to be the next 2 weeks after that, there's going to be something different. Ibram is Eric in the Forbidden Lands game. He's the player playing Arlek. And Ibram is going to start running a Vaesen campaign for the show. And the first session of that is going to be on the 14th. Sorry, on the 21st, not next week. In 2 weeks' time. So on the 21st, we're going to have our first session. It might be a session 0. We might do some session 0 offline and try and tie up into a session 1. I don't know. I need to talk to Ibram about what he wants to do there. But basically, we're going to be starting a monthly Vaesen game in 2 weeks, which is really exciting. The week after that, we're going to have a regular Forbidden Lands game. And then after that, I'll probably be returning to the 4th Pitchfork playtest design diary. So yeah, Vaesen is going to be the next game on the show. I'm not going to be jamming it. I'm just going to stick with... I've got so much on my plate with developing other games. I'm already running the Forbidden Lands campaign. I'm a co-host on the Mud and Blood podcast, and I'm running a monthly or bi-monthly game on that of Symbaroum, plus one-shots for games we're reviewing. I've got a lot on my plate, and I can't really commit to running lots of ongoing campaigns. So Ibram's doing that, and Ed, who's another player in our Forbidden Lands game, is going to be starting a Twilight 2000 game using using Free League's new rule set. We haven't got access to that. They're going to be sending us the latest manuscript rules to be able to play when they're ready. So the idea is that we'll have 1, maybe 2 sessions before the Kickstarter for Twilight 2000 in August. So that will probably be starting, hopefully we'll be starting in July, and then we'll have 3 campaigns on the go on this channel, all relating to the Year Zero engine. So that's really exciting. In between that, I'm going to be working on the Pitchfork playtest on Thursdays, tying in with that. So Thursdays is kind of our Twilight 2000 day on this channel. So Thursday evenings, European time. So if you're in the UK, that's 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. At the moment, we've just started playing Arma 3, which is a video game, a military, hardcore military combat simulator, first-person format. But we've added a ton of mods to it to make it feel like Poland in the Twilight 2000 era. And the cool thing about Arma is that it has a mod, or it's got a DLC thing attached to it called Zeus, which basically allows someone to be the GM, and which is actually works really incredibly well. So we have this hardcore military simulator with hardcore survival mods tacked onto it to make it feel like Twilight 2000, Polish troops, post-apocalyptic settings and landscapes and stuff. And then on top of it, one of the people involved in it, one of the players in that game, is actually using all of these digital tools to be a GM. He's thrown groups of NPCs at us, and it's incredible. It's really cool. It's like a really interesting mix of video game and role-playing game. So I'm really excited about that. We didn't have a huge amount of people following it last week, or this last Thursday, but we're going to continue playing with that and doing that to kind of get us hyped and into the mood for Twilight 2000. Because Twilight 2000, when it's going to be run, is going to be run on a Thursday. Because Ed, who's going to be GMing it, can't do that many Sundays. So, yeah. Okay, so... yeah, there's gonna be there's a lot coming up on this channel. There's gonna be 3 campaigns. Hopefully, by the time August comes around, we'll have 3 campaigns already started, and that'll just be a lot of actual play going on. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna stop talking now because it's 1:30. I wanted to stop half an hour ago. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up. I haven't really announced that anywhere else, so that's me done. So thank you for watching, and catch you next time. Loving the hype emojis. I need to get a couple more followers for this to for us to unlock the cool emojis. By the way, if you like this, if you are on Twitch, please, if you haven't hit the follow button yet, it really helps a lot. If with the channel, I'm trying to get to affiliate status, which allows me to unlock the custom emojis, which would be really cool. And I need 50 followers to do that. Otherwise, I've ticked all the requirements. So I'm currently set at, I think, 45. I could refresh and see if I've had one more since I've started streaming. And I need 50 followers to do that. Otherwise, I've got one more. So 46. I need 4 more followers. So if you haven't done it yet, or if you're watching on YouTube and you have a Twitch account, it would be really helpful if you could, nip over to Twitch and hit the follow button for this channel. But all good. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I don't really mind. That's me. I'm done. So good night, everyone, and thanks for watching. Bye. And now the awkward pause while I try and find my stop streaming window. There we go.